Welcome back to Burning Questions. It's a podcast from 500 Degrees, and 500 Degrees is a digital content shop. We have offices in Toronto, Miami, and of course, Columbus, Ohio. We specialize in digital transformation in the QSR space. We work with iconic brands, Firehouse Subs, Burger King, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes. We also work in the convenience store industry as well as the automotive space. And if you want to learn more about us, go to weare500degrees.com, click the link or follow a QR code, and you'll get there. Our guest today is Kris Foley. Now, Kris, you're the division president now. Before, when I met you, you're the metro president. Now you're division president of iHeartRadio.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on. You've got a great background in terms of agency experience, sales experience, broadcast experience. And I want to let our listeners know a quick pro tip, which is if you buy media, if you're an agency or you're a client, run, don't walk, and get in touch with Kristen or anybody at the iHeart studios and understand what they do for you. It's beyond just spots and dots on the media side. And they're actual great partners, and they've been a great partner of ours for a long time. So welcome, Kris. Tell us a little bit about your position and what you're doing now, and we'll just lean in and see where we go from there.
Absolutely. So I have been blessed to continue to be promoted within iHeart, and I love the fact that our company recognizes leaders that are just naturally curious and want to help and do good. So I get to coach teams in multiple markets now, still based in Columbus. But when you look at the iHeart model, we can help clients anywhere in the U.S., even expanding internationally now. And so now I get to coach even more teams and work with more clients to help them really harness the power of audio. And it's a very misunderstood space. You'd be surprised. The World Advertising Research Council, the people who put on Cannes, they did a study and they found that consumers are spending 31% of their time with media and audio, but yet less than 10% is currently invested in there. So part of my job is to really evangelize and explain how audio is a little bit different. These impressions hit differently, and to coach our teams on how to be curious and have really thoughtful conversations to bring solutions and to opportunities and challenges. And I get to do that every day.
Now, you guys have a group that works specifically with either clients or agencies, but it's beyond just a plan and buy.
Yeah.
Walk me through and our listeners through what you do, because it's fascinating. You've helped a number of our agencies at Eastport Holdings as well, but the ability for you guys to go shoulder to shoulder and grind with us on a client problem or an RFP,
Yeah.
whatever we're working on. Walk me through that.
Sure. So we have a division called Unified Partnerships, and they are a team of absolute mavericks. And that's the best way to describe them, as marketing mavericks that love to work with big idea-centric agencies. We partner, we collaborate, we figure out where our strengths are, and we support each other, and we go out and win business together. We hold ourselves highly accountable to returning on ad spend, and with their portfolio and their ability to really look at case studies from countless clients across the United States, we can bring in and say, this is proof it's going to work. And they're just a very curious, thoughtful team. And they work with our best partners to really think outside the box. Usually one channel marketing doesn't work. You need to have a cross-platform approach, and you need to be aligned, and everybody needs to win together, especially the client. So they're a thoughtful team, and I think it's really revolutionary. And I love some of the successes we've built together so far.
Yeah, it's great. And shout out to everybody that's helped us in Eastport, and
Yeah.
can't wait to do more. And is Behind the Mic. So that was an event that you threw, I think, was it in Cleveland? But
Yeah,
you guys do this nationally,
we
I would
do.
imagine. Tell me
The-
about Behind the Mic, because it really feeds into what we're doing today on a
yeah.
podcast, but it's also why people are interested in the audio business, particularly this form of entertainment.
Sure. So, Behind the Mic is a series of client summits to really educate them on the host experience, whether it's our on air hosts or all the hosts that we have in podcasts, and from their perspective, what types of marketing works and what doesn't. So, we go and we do this tour. People are very curious to learn about podcasting because a lot of people feel it's still emerging. When you think about it, podcasting is no longer an emerging media, it is officially here, especially when you look at the data where 50% of adults are now listening to podcasts. When you even dial into those really tough to reach emerging adults, I like to call them, those 25 to 34-year-olds, that number jumps to 42% of them
Hmm.
listening daily. That's a massive stat. So it's there, and I think what we found is that people really want to connect to the best individuals that they identify with. The top two reasons that people listen to podcasts are to learn something or to feel a part of something, and that makes it a very engaged environment. So people are curious to see how our model works, what's happening in the space, and they need a company they can trust. Sometimes people feel like some of the emerging media, whether it's podcasting or OTT, it feels a little bit like the wild, wild west. And you want to work with someone who is a publisher and a platform who can really think dynamically of how you can harness it. And so you don't have to work with hundreds of people. You can actually work with a trusted company. And iHeart has really jumped into this space, with both feet forward. And it goes back to that companionship, which is, when you think about it, the on-air hosts from our radio shows across the country, they were the original social influencers, but they were
Hmm.
social audio influencers. And then we found that, we want to put this content everywhere, but people have very busy schedules these days. So being able to put that human scripted content on demand is what podcasting is. So it's natural that we, a company that's very strong in human scripted content, live content, would then say, hey, you know what? We're onto something. Let's make this content on demand. So we educate clients across the country with these tours to just let them know what's there and what's available to harness.
I want to go to the next one. So when you have it, give me an invite. I don't
Of
care anywhere
course,
in the country. Let me go.
we're going.
What what is the like one of your top stars on the podcast system that you've got?
Well, we actually have 100 titles with more than a million monthly downloads. It's a pretty vast network. The top ones, stuff you should know, the OGs, and you'll learn something every time you listen to one of these shows. And I think that's why they're so engaging. So that's a top show. Pushkin has a whole slate of podcasts with us. I listen to Jay Shetty all the time. I feel like he's my personal coach, and I love
Right.
that because when I'm running a very busy schedule, but I also want to work on myself as a human being, I tune to him. His Healthier Mind podcast is absolutely incredible. Then we have like the whole entire NFL slate. We have the Black Effect Podcast Network. We have the Outspoken Podcast Network that's led up by Lance Bass. You name it, they're there. We also take all of our radio shows and we put them in a podcast form so we can meet the listener where they are with their schedule. So the Dan Patrick Podcast is one of our largest. Cowherd's Podcast. It's
Love Dan
pretty
Patrick.
cool. Yeah. So, but we
He's the
also
most
he's so
laid
down to
back
earth.
individual. He's a cool guy. Talk,
Yeah.
when so on the marketing ecosystem behind each one of the podcasts.
Mhm.
So obviously you have to reach out and use all social platforms in order to build an audience and to tease and to push. Does the individual star do that, or does iHeart supply that as well as part of the service behind the podcast promotion? Or is
So
it
when
both?
it's both, I always say you can have the best party ever, but if you never send out the invites, no one knows it happened. So one of the cool things about our structure is because we reach 89% of America with our broadcast properties, we're able to tease the content that we feel like will resonate for each of the podcasts that we launch. So it is full service. We have our on-air teams talking about it. We introduce the host, and there's a whole digital matrix behind. So when you start to look at someone who's listening to one type of podcast, you can then suggest the next one.
Hmm.
So we advertise our podcast, and our podcast doesn't sound crazy, but it makes a lot of sense. And so, because we find that the average person, once they start listening, they start to binge listen. So
Hmm.
it's just once they have that first experience, they're like, I really like how this feels. And when it comes down to it, people crave human companionship. And I think we learned in COVID that a lot of times people were missing that friend, that guidance. And when you actually look at the podcast space, it is very intimate. We're listening often on earbuds. So you have a chance to get to somebody who's actually in a state where you can get straight to their brain as opposed to having to deal with scrolling and all sorts of other things.
How did you guys keep it alive during COVID?
Well, that's when it really boomed because think about it, we were all sitting in our homes feeling extremely isolated, and that human content, it's the number one thing that makes a brainwave flex is the
Hmm.
human voice.
Hmm.
So we realized when the pandemic happened, that's when this whole rapid adoption started to engage, and it's only gone up since.
That's great. You guys have a great model for it.
Yeah.
And speaking of great models, so the iHeart experience to me, you have huge national events.
Sure.
You've got your own theater in Los Angeles,
Yes.
uh, and then you also bring it down to the local level. I think it's something like 350 massive events that you guys do.
So we
What's the
actually
number?
do 20,000 events a year.
That was
But
a softball.
but thank you. But that is something when you think about it, so we were all, sequestered in COVID, right? And then all of a sudden live is back and people want to experience. And when you look at today's young American, they crave experiences more than gifts. And so having that experience of being around like-minded people at these events and seeing unstoppable moments, things that you can't purchase but you have to experience, live is back. So from our tentpole events, that have even more brand awareness than Coachella. When you think about like the iHeart, Radio Music Festival, the iHeart Country Festival, Fiesta Latina, the Alt Ego Festival, all these places are a great chance to bring people together to see a collection of artists that they could never afford to see individually. Think about the price of the average ticket; it's expensive. So, but if you can bring a number of acts together, I absolutely love the endorphins that come out from being in the audiences of any of those shows.
So we've got CMAs coming up.
Yeah.
Um, who do you think is going to be a big walkaway winner? Do you think Jelly is going to
I think Jelly
roll?
he's gonna roll. I think one of the things I love about him is he's such a down to earth, good person, and I think he's gonna run away with it all. I think he crosses some genres. He's brought a lot of people into the country music area, and I just think he's somebody who is really in touch with America, which is important. That's what fans want to be. Fans lean into people that they can relate to, and I think he's one of the most relatable artists that's out there right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. The tagline, if I had to write one, it would be "Everything's better with jelly on it." And then you've got Morgan, who just recently had an interesting experience in Nashville, but
Yes.
it's probably his best year in terms of performance. So
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about what's next. So,
Yeah.
the term AI,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, human intelligence, what's happening either behind the scenes at iHeart or, with your audiences, with
Sure.
your planning, with your programmatic. Walk me through how that's going to enhance what you guys offer clients and customers.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest areas where we're using AI is through our partnership with Sounder. So we're able to now transcribe every single
Mm.
episode of a podcast. And when you think about the ad tech, so iHeart purchased Triton Digital a few years ago, and we've been able to build a full audio tech stack behind our offerings, which allows us to really identify who the audiences are, and what type of content's going to be relevant with them. So, from the Sounder partnership, when we transcribe these podcasts, we now can immediately put them in different languages and have voices actually deliver that content. So, if you want to
Mm.
listen, to any of the big money player comedy episodes, but English is not your native language, you can now listen in whatever language you need to have it translated to. So I love that. The other thing from a marketing perspective is we're taking that catalog of content from each episode and we're pulling out keywords of topics they're discussing. For example, we talked about the Stuff You Should Know podcast. There may
Mm.
be an episode where they're talking about how to make smart investments, right? Well, that might not be their topics all the time, but we can now dynamically insert information from an advertiser on financial planning into the episodes that talk about those subject matters. So we talk about that contextual relevancy and how important it is. That's another way that we're using AI.
Mm. Can we do that for Burger King, Tim Hortons, Popeyes, or Firehouse Subs? How
The
about the
answer is
QSR
yes.
level? Okay.
Yeah. The answer is yes. And when we think about QSR, I know we're talking a lot about podcasting because it is a very intimate space. Radio is still the last thing that 75% of consumers are exposed to before they go to a brick and mortar location. And that's why we see the QSR category doing so well with good old fashioned trusted radio.
I'm gonna challenge you here
Sure.
on a obscure concept, but the let's take the convenience store industry, for example.
Mhm.
The move right now in digital transformation from printed materials from the pump all the way into the cash wrap to digital screens.
Mhm.
Anybody that cumes 500 million of impressions on an annual basis now considers themselves as a retailer. They consider themselves as a media platform.
Sure.
Can Is there going to be a convergence of people that reach micro audiences, target audiences through a convenience store media platform, meaning that eyeballs walk into the store,
Mhm.
they get exposure to some of the advertising platforms that you have. Do we see that, or could you see that as a convergence opportunity for iHeart?
I think that that's actually a brilliant tactic to a multi-layered strategy. I mean, if you're using someone's actual shopping behavior and where they are to meet them with a message that is relevant, I think it makes sense. But I think you're also pointing to the fact that, there is a lot of fragmentation in media as a whole. So I think it becomes more and more important to really work with a strategic partner that can look at the bigger picture and not asset bomb you, for lack of a better word.
No, that's a
So
great term.
I think, and I think so many times that's the biggest failure that we have is we're like, we should do this, we should do that. Everything should work together. So using that technology, I think makes a ton of sense. I also think what some of the things that we're doing to use beacon technology to study shopping behaviors allows us to then serve ads to someone because they have been at a location that physical shopping behavior is one of the best predictors that a consumer could be in the market for your product. So let's use that. And
Hmm.
there are ways that we can use that through mobile device technology and advertising through our platform. That's just
So
one of the extra things that we
attribution,
do.
you guys can handle attribution. So if
Yeah,
we buy a package on iHeart, traffic driving, some kind of
sure.
promotional event for a QSR, an automotive dealer, a convenience store,
Hmm.
we can actually attribute retail visits to the push of your programming, or at least somebody who's a listener, boom, they come in.
Sure.
And then we could probably market back to them for increased visits, frequency, loyalty programming, you name it. I mean, I think there's something there that we should work on.
There is, and I think it goes back to the loyalty factor, right? So it's about having strategic conversations about where those opportunities are. And when you have audiences of our sizes, you're able to do a lot of targeting, but also influence the influencer. I think as marketers, because we have so much data on the consumer, sometimes we're honing in a lot on our target consumer. But when you look at most industries, their targeted customer only represents about 40% of their total customer base. And when you look at the American consumer, only 18% of Americans actually say nobody influences my decision. That means 82% do. So there is this importance of reaching people at the right moments at the masses because people trust recommendations from friends. So if you
Mm.
can make your brand top of mind with individuals, you're going to influence the everyday influencer who might be a sister, friend, coworker, loved one who's like, I really think you should take advantage of this. So I think we're at a little bit of a crossroads where we have to kind of look at like what Procter and Gamble did. They went heavy into digital, and I'm not saying digital is bad. I think digital is such an important thing, and area, but I think we have to take a step back and say, where are our brands and what do people think about them? Procter and Gamble realized they had a problem when people didn't know what a Kleenex was anymore. They called it a tissue.
Mhm.
And when I grew up, you never called it was always called a Kleenex. And so they took a step back and they looked at their marketing and they looked at their media modeling. And I know a lot of people say, "Hey, I don't have Procter and Gamble's budget, so why are we talking about this?" You probably don't, but the reality is you also then don't have the budget to study how marketing works. And they study it so extensively and they've seen such an impact by adding radio, podcasting, audio back into the fold in a major level. They've been able to cut overall investments and have record-breaking sales.
That's great. And they support the retail environment. What
Yeah.
kind of push do you see from, like, retail media has absolutely exploded in terms of, it's almost like the new co-op and vendor
Mhm.
relationship where a majority of dollars are starting to swing over. Do you guys have any partnerships with, let's say, Walmart, or Target, anybody that operates their own in-house retail media system?
So right now, I'm not aware that we do have those partnerships, but I will tell you we have a whole division that focuses on this. And if it doesn't exist now, I know we work very closely with Walmart. It wouldn't surprise me if that's something that's coming very soon with iHeart. But I think retail media makes sense. One of the hardest things to do is to get the consumer into your store. So
Mm.
once you've gotten them there, finding ways that you can personalize the experience for them and make the shopping easier through retail media, I think it makes sense. I think it would be something that we have to make sure that someone first gets there, and that's where the bigger audio play, I believe, truly is. But I think it's smart to look at that.
Can you give us a peek behind the curtain in terms of your last planning session with all the executives? What's coming up in the future? What is a mind-blowing thought that comes out of your leadership team in terms of where you guys are taking? Because you've already just reinvented audio.
Yeah.
What are you doing next?
Well, I think that's something that's kind of important to note. Like, we disrupted ourselves a long time ago, and I give Bob Pittman, our CEO, so much credit. He started MTV. He is one of the most amazing visionaries. It is truly inspiring to work with him. I was on a call with him yesterday, and his vision is really to continue to innovate, to continue to use AI to put our content in different languages. He is so committed to giving diverse voices a bigger microphone. And when I say committed, more than 50% of all the investing that we're doing into new programming is to give women, to give Black audiences, Hispanic audiences, a bigger microphone. So that's all
Mhm.
the content that we're investing into. And I'm so proud of that commitment, not to just say that diversity and equity and inclusion matters, but to actually put your money where your mouth is and create these amazing suites of content to make sure that our content can be available everywhere to any language. That's important. I think the biggest thing that we're going to focus on is helping marketers understand audio, because, like I said when we began, it's different. I'll give you an example. So I'm going to say something to you, and
Mhm.
I want your reaction. Okay, I'm going to say the words candy in the Grand Canyon. What
And
does it look? Yep. What does it look
what does
like to
that
you?
look like?
Uh-huh.
It looks like Candy Crush, the game.
Okay. Very cool. You want to
That's what I got.
great. Now you're like, why is she asking me this question? I'm going to get to it, but I think it's a really important thing. My candy in the Grand Canyon looks very different. I have jelly beans on the first roll. I have Smarties organized by color about halfway up. And I guarantee you, everybody who's listening to this podcast is now imagining candy in the Grand Canyon. Now, if I showed you an image, a visual of candy in the Grand Canyon, it doesn't make your brain have to get involved. It's a passive type of an impression. And obviously, if it's something that appeals to you, you're all in. But with audio, you get to make this hyper personal because I just use my imagination. And I think that's why audio impressions generate such a response. In fact, Dentsu did a study recently with Lumen, and they found that audio actually generates a 55% higher attention per second rate than social, digital, and television. And I think it's because you have to make it relevant to me, and then it's hyper personal. So that
Mhm.
candy in the Grand Canyon experiment, I guarantee you everyone's thinking of it differently, and that's how audio hits the consumer and how it's so impactful to engage them.
Well, I like the idea that you organize your Smarties by color.
I mean,
That
and they're rainbow. I mean, I'm actually very organized, but the jelly beans on the bottom, I don't know why they were there, but they were there. And but I just think
well,
when you paint that picture and you story tell, it really takes you to a hyper personal space.
so you obviously have a bustling career. What do you do outside? What kind of philanthropies are you involved with? What do you
Yeah.
do to sort of strengthen that heart side of the iHeart
Sure.
president?
So I'm on the board of Ohio for St. Jude's. In fact, we have a fundraising event tonight. Very passionate about that charity. I've had friends very much touched by childhood cancers and how much they have absolutely evangelized care and changed it to the point where research wasn't happening in that space. And now the outcomes are so much better. So I'm very proud of that. I work with the Columbus Symphony here. Just was at a gala for with them last Saturday. I get involved wherever we can. I usually follow the lead of my employees. I find it that if they're passionate about a product, then we're going to get all behind it and work together. Whether it's radiothons, we're doing a celebrity softball game coming up here with New Kids on the Block. Imagine like Rock and Jocks. So our team here in Columbus is doing a celebrity softball game. It's the gosh, I think it's year 4. We raise money for Nationwide Children's Hospital for mental health, because that is an area where, we cannot possibly invest more in helping the mental well-being of our children, especially our teens. And I'm so proud of what Nationwide Children's Hospital is doing here. So we do a fundraiser for them. But if you follow your team and you support the things that they support, it gives you a 360 impact.
Well, give us an idea of how we can get in touch. Talk to Jennifer, our producer, and tell us how we can get involved and support what you're doing, because we really appreciate your visit today.
Of
Is there
course.
anything? Is there anything on your reading list besides more podcasts to listen to or to-do
Yeah.
lists? Is there anything from a business point of view, or I don't care, nonfiction, fiction? Just tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what's on your bedside table.
The book I'm reading right now that I love for leaders, it's called Be the Unicorn, and it's 12 simple leadership approaches that you can do, and they're not hard. I sometimes you read these books and you're like, this is amazing, but when will I have time to actually activate this? I think it's an amazing book. It's a Times bestseller, but it's an easy read because it just draws you in. But it talks about just the types of things as a leader you have to do to be really present. I consider myself to be a humble leader. I work for my team, and I mean that. It's not just a word. I dig in. I help with problems, and this book is really good at kind of helping you understand exactly where you need to put your best priorities to really thrive and grow. So that's
Kris,
that. And then I have 3 kids that keep me like super busy. I love that my work and my life integrate. I won't call it a balance, but my kids understand what I do, and I hope my daughters in particular see that you can do anything you want if you're really willing to dive in and work hard.
that's inspiring, and appreciate you being here today. How can people get in touch with you? How do they touch base with
Yeah.
Kris Foley?
So, follow me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect that way. It's Kris Foley, iHeartMedia. DM me. I will get in touch with you. We are here to help. They can work through you. I'd love to partner with 500 Degrees. I think you guys bring so many smart ideas to the table, and anything we can all do together, I know it's going to rock.
Love it. Great. Well, this is Burning Questions from 500 Degrees. We really appreciate you being here. I want to thank Fallback Studios for hosting us today, our producer, Jennifer Hegren, and our writer, Joe Stuber. But with that, we're out of here, and goodbye.
Bye bye.
On the next episode of Burning Questions, your price is right, or is it? Are you underselling your company? Are you bidding yourself out of business opportunities? Well, on the next episode, Tracy Shirtcliffe, founder and CEO of Scope Better, joins me to help all of us find the sweet spot of selling clients on your value and how to maximize profits in the process.
What we need to be doing is showing the value that we're delivering. That's the magic.
It's coming up on the next Burning Questions.